Okay, welcome back. We're going to cover today topic 2, lesson 2, the Muslim Empire. We're going to look at how Islam spread outside of the Arabian Peninsula after the death of Muhammad. We're going to look briefly at some of the divisions that emerged within the Islamic world that still exist today. We're going to look at 2 of the early dynasties that governed the Islamic Empire, and particularly look at the Abbasid dynasty and how not only powerful it was, but also why it declined. Okay. So after Muhammad died, the successors of Muhammad, who were called caliphs, the first 4 were called the rightly guided caliphs because they knew Muhammad. They began to spread Islam outside of the Arabian Peninsula into the Middle East and North Africa. So initially, you have the early caliphs spreading into what's now Israel and Syria and those places into Egypt. Then gradually they're going to keep spreading through the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean region and all around North Africa. Not too long after Muhammad's death, there arose some divisions within Islam that largely deal with how leaders are chosen and some interpretations of the Quran. The majority of the world's Muslims are called Sunnis. Sunnis believe in following the example of the Prophet Muhammad, the Sunnah, which is a collection of stories about what Muhammad said and did. Sunnis represent about 80 to 90% of the population of the Islamic world. They believe that any religious Muslim man can be the leader of the Islamic community. The Shias are people who believe that only a descendant of Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and his son-in-law Ali can be the leaders of the Islamic world. So they believe that the Sunnis actually have taken out of the Quran all the verses that Muhammad said that pointed to his son-in-law being the successor. So about 10% of the Islamic world is Shia. These are largely found in Iraq and Iran. And so a lot of the problems that exist between Iraq, Iran, and all the countries surrounding there are tied to the Sunni Shia split. There's another type of Islam that's found throughout the Islamic world. It's both Sunni and Shia, is the practice of Sufi Islam. Sufism is a mystical approach to God. It seeks to experience God personally and intimately, as a lover will know another lover. And so we're going to talk about one of the Sufi mystics by the name of Rumi, who wrote a lot of poetry. There were several different caliphates that arose after the rightly guided caliphs that were not necessarily directly descended from Muhammad. The first of these was the Umayyad Caliphate that pretty much conquered the Middle East up to the what's now Turkey and across North Africa and into Spain. This was a dynasty that wasn't a very nice dynasty to non-Muslims. They treated non-Muslims very harshly. They also tended to treat the people who converted to Islam who weren't Arabs as second-class citizens as well, and it caused a lot of disgruntled ideas. And not too long into this dynasty, about maybe 80 years into it, another dynasty took their place called the Abbasids. The Abbasids had their capital at Baghdad, and they pretty much governed the same lands that the Umayyads had conquered, but they did it much better. They were much more efficient. They recognized the equality of all Muslims, and they established a government that was extremely stable for centuries. And really, in many ways, the height of Islamic culture was through the Abbasid Caliphate. There was another caliphate that developed in the early Middle Ages called the Fatimids. They were Shias, and their government was located in Egypt and Cairo. All of the caliphates shared some things in common. Arabic was the language that was spoken across their lands. most of the people in these areas were either Muslim or they were under Muslim law, Sharia law. So throughout this area, you had a common language, a common religion, a common legal system, even a common currency that linked all of these places together. Um, the caliphates, particularly the Abbasid Caliphate, declined ultimately because they were conquered by the Seljuks in the 1000s. So the Seljuk Turks took over the government. They still allowed the caliph to be there, but the caliph was only a religious figure. And all of this was brought to an end in the 1200s when the Mongols came in and they killed the last Abbasid caliph and took control over the area from the Seljuks. There were two empires that also arose in this time period, and we're going to talk a little bit more about them in lesson 3. But the Ottoman Turks, who by the 1300s pretty much controlled the area around the Mediterranean, including Constantinople and most of North Africa, and then the Safavid Persians, who governed what's now Iran, and they were Shia. The Ottomans were Sunni, and of course that whole debate between Sunnis and Shias was one long conflict of bloodshed between these two empires. So that's it for lesson 2. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and we're going to cover some more things in detail in class. Thank you, and I will see you guys next time.